When we get away from all the internal violence, there is a frequency called the frequency of silence. And one time I was staying at a meditation center with a group of monks and nuns from Myanmar. They were all Burmese, and they allowed me to come stay with them. And this time, they had switched their meditation center to one in Baldwin Hills in California. And as I was staying in their meditation center, just listening to them, just watching them, just seeing the ways that they move and groove, there was this lady that would come in and out of the center. Now, the monks and nuns, they would take people from the street, they would take people from all walks of life. And a lot of the people, ironically enough, that would voluntarily come and stay were just the people that were not always in a good way, not always in the best shape, not always feeling too great. Some of them were what you might call drug addicts, people who were dealing with levels of addiction, levels of constriction, and just levels of confliction with life. And they would come in, and the monks would welcome them, and they would give them a spot to stay and give them a spot to sleep. I was one of those people. They let me come in. They opened their refrigerator. They said, hey, you can eat whatever you want. They pointed to the mat in the meditation hall. They said, you can sleep here with all the little cats, the little kittens that would be there as well. And different people would come in and out who had dealt with alcoholism, heroin addiction, so many things. And they would have trailers and camps, things in the back, all the way amongst these mountains of donations that the monks received to send back to their family in Burma. And I remember there was this lady who never spoke, she never talked, she never uttered one word. She just spent all her days in silence. And her name was Rose, and the only way I learned that that was her name was that after weeks and weeks at a time of never hearing her speak, never hearing her utter a word, she just kept walking, never talking. One day, I saw her in the kitchen area, the dining hall, and she was talking. I stopped. It was like, I couldn't believe it. I was, what? Like, you can speak? She had a voice, and I heard her voice, and it was like, what? And I walked towards her, and she said, oh yeah, my daughter's coming today, so I'm talking right now. And the way that she was talking, you could tell that she didn't really use her voice so much. She really spent a lot of time in silence. But it was like she was, chewing her words. It was so delightful for her to finally speak. She said, my daughter's coming by, so I'm talking today, but, after my daughter leaves, I won't be talking. And I said, okay, let me relish this, let me really get engaged in this conversation. And I asked her what her name was. She told me her name was Rose. And, I asked her, how do you see the world? What is this not talking? Did you take a vow of silence? And she said that for her, there are a lot more things she can hear when she's not speaking. She told me something. I'll never forget the seed that she planted. What she told me was so profound that I had to really roll it around my mind several times to understand. She said, you'd be surprised what you hear when you just listen. Now just think about that. She said, you'd be surprised what you can hear when you just listen. I didn't understand it at the time, but she went further to explain that she was able to hear things that for many seemed strange. She was able to have inner and outer conversations with beings. People might say galactic beings, alien beings, celestial beings, whatever these beings were that spoke on the frequency that required no language, that required no speaking, that required no words, the frequency of silence. She was speaking and communicating with those beings all the time. Every day that she was walking inside with those beings, she was always talking. And they were talking back. So I thought about that. I was like, she said, you could be surprised what you hear if you just listen. I asked myself, am I not listening? What am I not listening to? They say that in the auditory world, that there is a bandwidth, that we can only hear certain things, like those dogs barking, right? We can hear that in the auditory spectrum. We can hear certain things, but that doesn't mean that that's all there is. There's more outside of that range, right? Just like the whistle for Appa in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang had a whistle that he would blow into this whistle, and his air bison would be the only one to hear it. None of the opponents could hear it, but the air bison would be flying out of nowhere and come in and save the day. Because he could hear something that was beyond, right? The same is with us. There are things that we hear, but things that we don't. There are things that we see, but things that we won't, right? What do they call ultraviolet light? Ultra meaning above or beyond the visible spectrum. The sun is beaming. You are sun gazing. You're gazing at the sun. You appreciate the sun and all of its glory. But that's just the story, right? You don't actually see all of the light that your eyes invite through the rays of the sun. You're getting a lot more than you think you are. So if there's a lot more to see than we actually see, if there's a lot more to hear than we actually hear, would you believe that there's a lot more that you could imagine? Or should I say that there was more than you could have ever imagined, beyond the scope of your reality, right? Beyond the realm of your reality. And if you just shift, if you just change, it can open up for you. It can open up doors for you to explore. They talk about clairaudience, right? To be able to hear. I hear things. Clairvoyance, I see things. Clairsentience, I feel things. Claircognizance, I know things. You ever heard of these clairs? These abilities? With people who just say, I don't know why I know, I just know. You know? I just see it. I just see it. You almost hear it in their speech, right? Like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, I can see that. Right? You ever heard somebody say these things? Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that sounds about right. They're telling you, they're explaining already, whether they know it or not, the language through which they can communicate. How does that sound to you? You know? You see what I'm saying? Right? You start to listen for these little hints, these little clues, these little words where somebody is telling you the language they have preferred. And it drops something for you to understand the power that each of us has at hand. What is beyond the scope of your imagination that you could stretch yourself to discover? What are things that you couldn't possibly imagine, but you could allow yourself to uncover? Or what is something in your memory that might have been lost that you could possibly recover, right? That you could possibly remember and put back together. We continue learning. We get better and better. So I challenge you, my friend, Yes. Alexis says, I want to fast from speaking. Yeah. You know, fasting from speaking, fasting from all the seeking. It can be one of the best inner teachings that we could be reaching. When I went on that 10-day Vipassana retreat, we had no journaling, no talking, no touching, right? No entertainment, no misconduct, nothing to distract us from the mind. And you'd be surprised what you might find. When you go just for a stretch or a period of time, the universe speaks. You see the signs. So thank you for listening. Thank you for glistening, my friend. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Keep that grateful, thankful spirit. And just like Rose, I pray one day you will have chose to listen to something beyond. Even if at the moment you don't know how to hone it, you realize deep down you've always known it, right? And why do we point here? Why do we point to the heart? Because the heart is the best place to start. Much love. Take care, and we'll see you again, my friend.